Hey, sustainability champions, Daniel Hartz here. Today I'm speaking with sustainability champion Neil Jacobs, the CEO of Six Senses, which are luxury resorts and spas that have a commitment to balancing economic, environmental, and social profitability while being harmonious with local communities and ecosystems. Their commitment to both people and nature is so strong that aside from winning multiple awards for their work in sustainability, Six Senses has been invited to build a resort on the Galapagos Islands, where a special conservation law prohibits further settlement on the islands. Just goes to show how carefully Six Senses considers and works within their environment. So today I'd like to cover three things, broadly speaking. Number one, how Six Senses actually keeps the environment safe and all of the various things that the team does to keep it in mind, why focusing on people is just as important as the environment, and then what we all can do to be more sustainable in our daily lives, especially as it relates to travel. So you can watch the entire conversation with us now to learn all about the sustainable resorts of Six Senses. So Neil, thank you so much for joining us today. Good to see you.
Great. And you, Daniel. Great pleasure to be chatting with you.
And where are you joining from today?
So much for joining us today. Good to see you.
I'm in Singapore today. I'm home in Singapore. Yes.
Beautiful. And for those of you who are watching right now, please feel free to share your comments and questions if you have any for Neil in the chat, and I'll be monitoring and doing our best to answer that. We actually have Bernice Suma in the chat, just mentioned that she's joining from Papua New Guinea. So welcome,
wow.
Bernice.
That's great.
Yeah, global audience. Well, with that, I've done most of the talking so far, and I think I certainly want to hear more from you than from me. So could we just take a quick step back and do kind of a brief overview of what exactly is Six Senses?
Sure, with pleasure. Six Senses is a hotel group that has been around for just over 30 years by now. And it started life in the Maldives at a place called Seneva Fushi, and has been going on since then. And from day one, the founders have had a tremendous commitment to sustainable practice and were engaged in some of the things that we will talk about today, long before most people were even saying the word sustainability. So long history. We bought, or the group that I'm with, bought the company about 12 years ago. And we recently sold it to a very large hotel group called IHG, but the team is still intact. I'm still intact, and continue to run the property. But it gives us a lot more firepower than perhaps it did before by having a larger group behind us. But it's we operate globally. We have hotels and resorts globally. And over the past 10 or 11 years, we've moved out of just being in Asia, but now have a strong presence in Europe and are coming to the Americas, as you talked about, with Galapagos and others. We're also doing a few urban properties because we believe that the platform of sustainability and wellness, which, by the way, we're also kind of is a strong value for us. We're very active in that area too. That between both, we need to bring that to the city. It's not just about being on a beautiful island resort or mountain resort somewhere, and allows us to integrate it perhaps even stronger into people's daily lives. So that's what we're doing. We have 22 operating hotels today, and about another 25 under development as we speak. Yeah,
that's incredible. That's that's a lot to juggle, and it's a lot of work. And taking a look at the Six Senses website and clicking on the little map button showing where they all are, there's some really unique locations. How do you pick your locations? Because I mean, some of them are just really outstanding and stunning.
Yeah, we've never been frightened of remote. Right from the beginning. And when we're out looking at locations and environments, to find spots that are somewhat pristine and underdeveloped has always been a focus for us. As long as they are accessible to our guests and they don't take days to either trek in there or whatever, that's okay. But the nature is important, the environment itself is important, what we can do to enhance environment, labor and communities, and the impact that our properties can have on local community tends to be greater in some ways if we are in more remote areas. But the point is they need to be beautiful. I mean, we're working, two projects in particular today, one in Iceland on the southeast coast of Iceland. It's about a 5-hour drive from Reykjavik. The drive itself, and you can get there by plane, but the drive itself is just a huge part of the experience, because the country is an extraordinary looking country that's I've never quite seen anything like, and it just becomes part of the whole experience is getting there, and through the glaciers and so on and so forth. And we just announced something in the northern part of Norway, to go and see the lights, the northern lights, at a place called Svart, which for your sustainability champions, it's worth looking up, because it's an area that is absolutely carbon negative even today, and the owners of this property have such a focus on sustainable practice that when we meet owners like that, we get very excited, because not every owner is like that. But just those two properties, for example, I would give you an example that they're not areas that people would that hotel groups would typically go to, but that for us becomes a plus point.
Yeah, it becomes that is the selling point, because it's unique and different. From the point of view of sustainability, is ultimately there's a lot that sets Six Senses apart from other hotels. But one of them, and especially within the context of our conversation here, is sustainability. I suppose if we start broadly speaking, what is Six Senses' approach to people and the environment?
Well, I say it's quite simple. I mean, these things are never that simple, right? But it is such an embedded part of the culture of the company, and has been for so many years, that I would say 70 to 80% of our customers, our guests, are with us because, yes, the place is beautiful, and yes, the service is good, and all the things that you would expect to receive from a high-end hotel are there. But sustainability shows up in hundreds of small but different kinds of ways. Just there's no plastic, there's no paper, you don't have large guest directories. I mean, obviously there's no straws. The way we cook, the way food is stored in the kitchens, the way the fishermen, what they bring their fish to the to the hotel inn, so our approach is lots of small elements, and that even includes supply chain. It's not just about the guest facing elements, but it's how we operate, how we build the resorts, firstly, how we operate the properties, and how we interface with local community. So if you ask what are the big sustainability buckets, that's what they fit into. And then how it shows up is a lot of small elements, as I just explained. But then also we have kind of larger initiatives that become kind of company-wide initiatives. I mentioned plastic. We're coming now to the back end of a 5-year commitment to be plastic free, 100% plastic free. And as I say, that was started just over 4 years ago. And it was very systematically done, and every hotel or every property took inventory of every single piece of plastic that was in the property. So it was, painstakingly analyzed, because there's hundreds of pieces, whether it's the pen, that is in the guest room, the little cap on it is, okay, there's a plastic cap on the pen. We need to find a new pen. Or, we went into the kitchens, and with, a bunch of fancy chefs that all want to cook, what's called sous vide, right? Which is basically, putting a beautiful fillet of fish or whatever into a plastic bag and steaming it. And the chefs are telling us this is, which we know is a fine culinary art, and maintains, all the nutritional value of the food, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know the speech. So, our reaction was, well, let's talk a little about microplastics first of all, and what that is doing to people's well-being. But equally as important as that is we're using millions of bags a year. So guess what? We're not going to do that anymore. So that's a huge shock to the culinary community, because they're used to cooking like that. So that's kind of the level of detail that we move into. And over the 4 years, biannually not biannually, twice a year we've done inventory and have tracked progress. And about 18 months ago, we checked in again and saw what was there, or what was left, and we've reduced probably 70%. Wow. And I'm not sure that we're going to get to 100, but we were at 70%. And we analyzed what was remaining, and 80% of the 30% that was left, we could identify what those items were, and the majority of them were down to 18 items. So we created a campaign, like a US Western thing that went out through every hotel, and we called it the 18 most unwanted. And we had gunslingers and all kinds of stuff like that. And, I wonder if you could have a guess as to what, like the top 2 or 3 of those items were. What do you think?
Yeah, my first inclination is to think of the obvious things, but then I would imagine that you would have taken those out. So, I mean, for me, it's like the little shampoo bottles, but that I would imagine would be one of the first things that you would have taken out.
We never had, actually, they never had plastic shampoo bottles. So we were probably first hotel company to do a refillable, and were highly criticized for that from a hygiene perspective. And how can you do that? And are they being cleaned and emptied? Yeah. But no, actually, the first one is the Nespresso capsule. I shouldn't mention a brand name, right? Because even though in some jurisdictions and cities they're recyclable, in many of the resorts that we're in, it doesn't happen. So, we worked on that. We found replacement coffee pods that are in, cardboard, or I mean, there are ways to do it today. And then it's those silly little, not silly, but the cotton buds, that you put in bathrooms. And I mean, small items, but that people just kind of, they're just there. You think about it, and so on. So this has been a major initiative for us, and we're close to the end. And as I say, if we don't make 100%, we're going to at least make 85%. And so that's big impact. And that was a corporate kind of thing, which we do every now and again.
Yeah, I think that's, well, first of all, congratulations on nearing the end. I think it's a couple of things, just for what it's worth, is there's a lot of talk in the sustainability community of it's not about, doing sustainability perfectly. It's about many people just doing sustainability imperfectly. And so I think the fact that, even if you don't get to 100%, the fact that you're so systematic about it is already extremely impressive. And I think, and that's kind of to my second point, is it demonstrates to the hospitality community and just businesses in general that it is possible. And, I think what you mentioned as well, that 70% of people who are in your hotels are there, aside from kind of the obvious reasons of beautiful locations, great service, etc., is because it's sustainable. And so all of a sudden, these decisions that you're making they're financially beneficial as well, because from a business point of view. And I think that's, both of those things are really important to demonstrate.
Yeah. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's not always about reaching the goals. It's about the intention, and it's about the culture that you create within an organization. I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? But certainly in my industry, we don't have a great record of sustainable practice. We just don't, and particularly at the high end, because people have this messed up thinking that, if you're paying a lot of money to stay in a hotel, that luxury, which by the way is a word we don't usually use, that luxury has to be certain things, and unfortunately that includes a lot of unsustainable practice. But it's changing. I mean, the train has finally left the station. I mean, I think we're in a better place today than we were as an industry 5 years ago, and as a consciousness and awareness. And I do believe that COVID has driven a lot of things. And as I said earlier, we're also very focused on wellness, and for many years, wellness and sustainability were two different departments within the organization, but more and more every single day, they just become one, right? And materials used, and the plastic itself, it's just about wellness of the planet. And and people, hotels are going to have to get more active because the employees are demanding it. And in this post-COVID world where it's really difficult to find people that want to work in hospitality today, a lot of people have left the industry as a result of being shut down during COVID. But it's almost the employees that when they come for interviews are asking, what's your green policy? What are you doing? 5-10 years ago, that would never happen. So you're absolutely right. The commercial necessities of driving an agenda here are very real, and we take a view. Okay, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the reason. It would be great if the intention was there, but if you have to do it anyway, that's better than not doing anything, right?
Absolutely.
And it will come. Culture will grow over time, for sure. So I think it's an exciting period for some of these activities.
Yeah.
And particularly the people side of it, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I think and that's actually the piece about COVID that makes me quite excited. And the good, I think some of the good that is going to and is coming out of COVID, I think people are more mindful than they were before. I think people are, and you can't generalize, right? But I think people are kinder than they were pre-COVID, and they're more tolerant in some ways, and creating communities and enhancing communities, I think is definitely more prevalent than it was before, and that's a big piece of our agenda around sustainability, because we work in and often some odd places, and with local villages near us and so on. We're very much about including people into our world rather than excluding. As I just said, we don't use the word luxury. We don't actually use the word exclusive either. We like to think that we are inclusive, even though we are expensive. So that is not for everybody. But there are other ways to include, community and the constituents that live near us in our world, and that becomes a really, really a big part of our sustainability agenda.
And why is that? And actually, I'm glad you jumped to this part of the conversation, because community is a crucial aspect of sustainability. And as you're saying, it's blending together. And so, and we were talking about this previously as well, the importance of keeping in mind community, wellness, employees. As you mentioned, you're working in remote areas. And so, why is it so important to have that involvement from the local community and really consider the people around the resorts and the properties?
Well, many cases they were there before we were there, right? And it's their homes, and we work in a lot of areas that would be considered, the developing world, and disadvantaged people in some ways. So we just kind of see it as it's a responsibility. It's our social responsibility. We want to have relationship with the communities that we live close by to. We feel that they can be part of the organization, whether it's through providing employees that we can train, or just the knock-on effect. For every member of staff, in Six Senses we call them hosts, but for every one person that we hire, there's probably a knock-on effect of impacting 4 more people, whether it's suppliers or builders or whatever. So I mean, to us, that's just part of our responsibility. I mean, yes, we're there to make money, as you said before. We have to be profitable to sustain, but it's not only about making money. For us and our culture, there is I don't want this to sound religious, but there is somewhat of a higher purpose in what we do that can impact people's lives, and and it's not just about our guests, it's also about our employees. And so it's almost and it's just a natural part of our culture, which is actually what drew me to Six Senses in the first place. I mean, we were 8 hotels when we bought the company, and we're going to be 50 hotels. So it's grown, and it's grown geographically. But that was the exciting part about being able to impact in a positive way these communities by being in their presence, or in their world. I mean, in Fiji, for example, where we operate, I mean, the local indigenous Fijians actually own the land, so we have a responsibility. They are our landowners. We have legal contracts with the indigenous folks, and we do go to the village meetings, and we do sit in the circle in the campfire and drink kava, the local hooch, with the village chiefs, which I would not recommend doing too much of, by the way. But it's part of the joy of being in those environments. And we will ask them if we can bring guests to those meetings, for example, because as a customer or as a guest, you would not normally get that opportunity to experience something like that, right?
Yeah.
So it's all part of the narrative. It's all part of the narrative, and it does some good, and in a small way. And again, I'm careful how I say these things, but in a small way, we can help to improve people's lives. And maybe it's not earth-shattering, but every little bit is important. So we have unlike most hotel companies, we have a director of sustainability at every hotel.
Oh, wow.
Who sits on the executive committee of the hotel. So basically, every decision that is made at hotel level, the sustainability department has had an opportunity to weigh in on that decision. So 99% of hotel companies would not invest or do not invest in that role. And, often what they do is the general manager's assistant, secretary, whatever, would, run a green team once a month and bring in a few people, and, it makes some decisions. And that's not to, downgrade the importance of that. It's really important, but we needed, or what we did many years ago, was to elevate the position and have it be part of senior management of the hotel. So that sustainability director touches every single department, whether it's food and beverage or the rooms department or engineering or human resources or whatever. So consequently, it becomes part of the culture of the organization. And to have real impact is about changing culture, and it has to be from top down. Because if it's not, if the senior management are not completely embedded in what you're trying to do, it's not going to work. When we hire a new GM, for example, they go through about 5 interviews by the executive committee of Six Senses corporately. And I'm generally the last one to weigh in on that and see, where they get to. But they are interviewed by our head of wellness for the group and by our head of sustainability for the group. And these are two subjects that people who go to hotel schools and become general managers of hotels generally do not learn about or get involved in, because only now are you starting to have wellness modules at hotel school or university or whatever, or sustainability modules. So our view is they have to be interviewed by those people, because we don't expect everyone to be an expert, but we do expect them to care about it. And and everyone will say to you, yeah, we do that. I work out, I go to the gym, I pick up trash, but they don't, right? So they go through in-depth screening. And if we feel that the heart is there, then we may hire them, because there are great hotel people out there that don't care about those two things, but then they're not for us, and they need to go and work for somebody else, right? So it has to come from the top.
Yeah, and it's clearly deeply embedded, as you say, into the culture and the philosophy of it. And one question that I'm really curious about, which is slightly different topic but nonetheless related, is the sustainability fund that Six Senses has. How does that work?
Yeah, it's very interesting, and again, it's not something you would see in any that I'm aware of in any other hotel group. And for us, it's contractual with the owners. Just to explain to people who perhaps are not so familiar with the industry, most hotel companies do not own their hotels. For example, we will have 50 hotels in 3 or 4 years. We don't own one hotel, right? We are a brand, and we provide a brand narrative, and we assist in construction and development, and then we operate, we market, and we operate, but we are not the owner of the hotel. So part of what we have to do is convince potential owners that we're the right brand for them, and so on. And not all of our owners are quite as passionate about sustainability as we are, because they're in a different business. But the thing to remember is that it's not our money; it's their money, right? As they fund it to develop it, and the profit goes to them, and we are, like most hotel companies, paid a fee to operate and bring the brand. So fees are generally negotiable, right, when you do a deal. However, the one thing that is not negotiable is the sustainability fund. And we ask that 0.5% of total revenue be allocated to sustainable practice that is outside of the walls of the hotel. All right. That it's not spent on an initiative at the hotel, but is spent on external initiatives. And often that causes problems in terms of, well, we don't want to do that, or we want to negotiate it, and it's a very quick conversation. It's no, it's not negotiable. And if you want a Six Senses, it comes with having a Six Senses. So every single hotel we have is allocating, and it's budgeted and it's contracted, 0.5%. Now, we will sit down with the owner and collectively agree where that money gets spent, because they are on the ground often there, and I'm totally fine with that it becomes a mutual decision. but the money every month goes into a special account, and it's kept there, and every year we try and spend it, and it can be spent on water projects in Thailand, coral reef preservation in the Maldives, and a big part of what we do in the Maldives is around the manta rays and so on. Education, particularly in Oman, we're in the Musandan Peninsula of Oman, which is pretty remote, and we have one or two villages next to us, and we really support the village in a lot of ways, educationally, getting to school, so on and so forth. And you can be talking, I don't know, maybe $300,000, $300,000 perhaps a year. And some of them more higher rated. Obviously, depends on, as it's a percentage of revenue. It depends how successful the hotel is, right? Which is okay, but it's an interesting thing. And when we bought the company in 2012. What was happening, it was that sustainability fund, all that money was coming into Bangkok, which is where our head office was, and it was used for more global corporate initiatives. And it was one of the things that we changed immediately on buying the group, was that the money remain in the jurisdiction where it was earned. And I think that, I mean, we believe that was the right thing to do, but also I just think the integrity of that was greater, and sent a different message out to those communities that we are really there to support.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it makes a lot of sense to keep it local. It really does. It seems like a virtuous cycle in that case, which makes a lot of sense. As far as what you're looking toward in the future, I mean, 25 hotels in the next 3 to 4 years is huge, and I think I obviously don't know what all of them are, but the Galapagos is such an exciting opportunity, and such a unique one, I think. How did that even come about?
Well, we've been looking there for a long time, actually, and I mean it's been on the agenda since I arrived in 2012, and everyone knew it would take a long time, and we were never sure that we would even succeed in that. And I mean, we have another project as well in Colombia, in a national park, that has been going equally as long, and we haven't yet succeeded in getting all the permits that are required. But very good local developers in Ecuador, who are from Guayaquil, and they just hung in. They hung in, and no global brand actually has ever been allowed into Galapagos. I mean, there are hotels. It's not that there are no hotels, but they're all kind of somewhat family run, more local type hotels. And so we just hung in, and we went and we talked, and they studied us, and saw that our intention was pure, and that if you were going to let in an international group into their very, very fragile ecosystem, they felt that we were probably the best bet, given our position on sustainability and our focus on how we build and being light on the land and so on, where that's necessary to be. And then it came through, and that was probably two and a half years ago. And then it took a while to really get it all funded. And the UN are actually going to participate a bit in this, which is kind of unusual. And they brought in another partner to help the local group who are connected to the UN in some of their development work. So they managed to bring that in. So that's going to help along the way. And it's on the island of San Cristobal. We're going to do about, I think it's like 45 rooms, 45 to 50 rooms. And so not huge, but big enough to make a little bit of money. That's important too. And we're looking at different opportunities, how to have a boat that goes along with it. So, trying to find the right sustainable boat that we can, use the lodge as a base, and then, move our guests around the islands as well. So I'm just super excited about it. It's high on the list.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting opportunity. I think the fact that the UN is somehow getting involved, and even on a more kind of down to earth, or I suppose individual level, I hope that as guests come to the Galapagos, and in the spirit of Six Senses, they'll start learning about the fragile ecosystem there, and as part of that, I hope that there'll be a much greater appreciation of the environment that results from people visiting it and really seeing all of that.
I hope so, and I think so. And we'll look at kind of getting involved there with research and ways to showcase the islands. So I mean, there's a lot to do there from the community side of it, and just really be a good citizen with the local authorities, actually, and really assist in that. So yeah, there's stay tuned. I think we're probably still 2 years away from opening, but that's okay. It's going to be good.
When you're working in such a special place, you have to take your time and make sure everything's done correctly and tread lightly. Don't want to rush through it.
Sure.
Well, that's very exciting. Good luck with that. The final question that I have is, I mean, as you said, hospitality is not always known to be the most sustainable industry. But what would you recommend, for people who travel frequently or infrequently? What are some things that they can do when they travel to really lessen their environmental impact?
Well, the whole carbon conversation is a much bigger conversation, maybe for another time. But actually, that's our next big focus as a group. But obviously, just be mindful about how you're flying, where you're flying, and what you can do there. And if you can manage some offsets, that's always useful. And just just to think about, just to be mindful of the communities that you're going to visit. I mean, people love to go, because there are so many fragile communities out there, and whether you're going to on safari in Africa or the Galapagos or the Northern Lights in Norway or whatever. Just engage however you can in that experience of where you are, because it's just so enriching on so many levels, and look for a takeaway that is more than just kind of. There's nothing wrong with just lying on a beach and relaxing and regenerate. The buzzword now, right? We call it regenerative travel. Right. I mean, that's the word of the last 18 months. But it is what it's all about. It's intended, to regenerate and regenerate yourself, but not just within yourself. What can you do to contribute? What can you learn from one of these trips? And because these great experiences that you can take home with you, and that you will always remember and contribute however you can. I mean, it sounds a bit like a university lecture, but I mean, it's I think that's what travel is all about today. I mean, that's not true. It's not what it's all about. Not everybody wants to do what I just described, and that's okay. But people are more mindful, as I said earlier, than they were a few years ago, and I think that is very compelling to a lot of people today. So just enjoy it, enjoy it and take something away with you.
Wonderful. And for anyone who is interested in learning about Six Senses, seeing all the sustainability work, or even booking some rooms, where would be the best place to go?
Well, start with sixsenses.com.
Perfect.
Yeah, there you go. It's all there, and there's some great photography, and hopefully that will get you calling in. And we'd love to have you all.
And yeah, for anyone who hasn't spent any time on the sixsenses.com website, I really encourage it. You can get lost there and you feel like you've taken some regenerative travel just by looking at all of the different properties and all the pictures and videos. There's a lot. It's very information and media rich, which is a lot of fun. So Neil, thank you so much for your time. This was a wonderful conversation. And I'm very inspired by the amount of thought that goes into each property, and from removing all of the plastic to going into environmentally sensitive places like the Galapagos. It's very clear that you and the team at Six Senses are extremely diligent, thorough, and as you say, you have a bigger purpose. So hopefully it's something that other businesses are seeing, and you're setting an example for them, because I think it's crucial. So
thank you. It is, and as I said, I think the train's left the station, so you're going to see more of it from more people. So that's also the exciting part.
Indeed. And well, with that, thank you again. And so we have Neil Jacobs from Six Senses joining us today to talk about the benefits of sustainable travel, sustainable hospitality, and being involved in the local community. So thank you very much for watching. And thank you again, Neil, for your time.
Thanks, Daniel. All the best.